Okay, it is recording. Um, so Donna, I wanted to have a question just because we're getting close to summer, and one thing I'm really excited for Kateri led is picking berries. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about my favorite food, strawberries, or you could share a little bit about your favorite food. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. So strawberries. They are our first fruit of the season. And the Haudenosaunee people, they have ceremony for the strawberry season. It starts all the rest of the berries. And from what I've been told is the strawberry is the only fruit that has its seeds on the outside. And it reminds us that, we don't need to hide who we are. We look at that strawberry and, we don't, like me, I'm a kind of a person that feels a lot. I'm very soft in a lot of ways, you know what I mean? Like my personality and my way of being around people, I always try to be kind and, so I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve sometimes, and colonization has taught us that that's wrong, to ignore our emotions, and especially men are told, don't cry, it's not good. Don't show your emotion because it says that we're weak, when in fact, because those tears are healing, that it's a strength, And so I've learned over the years that, it's okay to show our emotions. It's okay to get angry sometimes, It's okay to be joyful because those are the traits of being human. Human beings have all of those feelings. So I am reminded of that when I'm working with strawberries, because I love strawberries. I don't know what it is. They say that, spirit that we have in our bodies, we're spirit, we are spirit. And we're having kind of like a journey here on earth. And those plants and those animals, those plants, it's the only way that we can feel them, to enjoy their beauty, is by touching and preparing and all of that. So, it reminds us that the sweetness, when we bite it, it's sweet. And that's the sweetness of life. So we're reminded of that. And also, when you're, there's a way to cut a strawberry, odemen, it's a heartberry, it's medicine. The whole plant is medicine. So when we ingest that, it's like, I don't know, describe like eating a salad kind of thing. Eat everything. The leaves are medicine. The whole strawberry is medicine, The roots, you can make strawberry tea. You can make strawberry juice. All of that's medicine for us. And so we cut it one way and it looks like a heart, because it's a heartberry. It's our heartberry. And they say that Creator put our heart a little bit to the left, to make room for our spirits. So it has such significant meaning. And sometimes we just make pie and enjoy strawberry pie like my mom used to do. Strawberry rhubarb pie she used to make, you know, because she didn't know. She didn't know. She lived in the bush, and Fred reminded me of that story, you know, of how my grandparents, you know, they stayed in the bush too. So they lived off those berries. And the berries that we have today are big and juicy and stuff, but the real berries are very small. You know, they're small. And our strawberries are, I used to work in the territory of Six Nations. And an elder told me a story, you know, that those berries also represent forgiveness. And I always, when I do our openings, I always like to have strawberries or blueberries or something. So that's it for me. Much.
Thanks, Donna. So we're gonna pass it over to Manitok. So I'm just gonna add you to the screen. So one of the ways I actually learned about you was from an APTN article. And it talked about, you know, how you harvested animals down south, and how it was like really different for you when you came down south and you saw, you know, all the animals that die from like car accident, and no one really cares about those animals. So I really love if you could talk about that a little bit. And then also one question that we had for you is, how do you stay connected to the land as an Inuk, being so far away from your homelands? How do you reconnect to the land over here in Algonquin territory?
Actually, we were living in Alberta for 8 years before we came here. My family, my little granddaughter had leukemia, and there's no hospitals in Nunavut. So I was in Winnipeg with her for 9 months in isolation. Her parents had separated. And so we have adopted her. She's totally well and stuff, but we brought her to Canmore, Alberta. That's where we had bought a house. And there's also that new Alberta Children's Hospital that I wanted her to be serviced after we came out of Winnipeg. So, and then we came here. In Alberta, I used to see roadkill, and I was often wondering, I wish I could take that skin, but I never did because it's national parks and stuff, and seemed to be a lot of more regulations and stuff like that. When you grew up, when you have grown up in my environment as Inuit, we are very much into animals and animal skins and eating the skins, and not eating the skins, eating the whole animal, making use of the whole animal. And it's very disturbing as an Inuit. I know other Inuit that have come down south traveling on the highway. My brother-in-law, my other nephews and stuff like that say, there's a deer that's roadkill and nobody's attending to it. It's really disturbing for us. It's like going out hunting and you throw it away, the whole thing. So when I went here to Ontario, the regulations seem to be, I live out in the country, so I'm able to go on the country roads and see some raccoons that have been roadkill, and coyotes. I've known, I have gotten roadkill coyote, frozen roadkill coyote, and go grocery shopping because I didn't have time to drop it off at my house. So that's what I was doing. I started doing it because I could just hear my father in my mind saying, what's wrong with these people? They're just, we don't make fun of dead animals. We respect them too much. And it bothers me on Facebook when hunters have hunted their moose and their deer and they're laughing at them or spreading their legs or whatever they're doing. It's the most disrespectful behavior I have ever seen in the hunter's world. And my father, I could just hear my father saying, the raccoon is there. Somebody has to pick it up and take the skin. So that's what I started doing. I would collect roadkill, mostly raccoon, beaver skins, and coyote, skin them, dry them, tan them, and make them into mitts, and $250 in the end of the day for a pair of mitts that they had run over. Everybody would just pay for that anytime, any day. And then I thought, I don't know anybody here in town. These people don't know who I am. I don't go to the bars. I don't socialize. My husband and I we just stay home type of people. I'm actually the CEO for Inuit Broadcasting Corporation. But so I thought, when the white people came to my country, to my town, they taught us to be them. So I'm going to teach these guys to be me. So I started opening my house every Saturday and telling anybody want to come over and learn how to skin, have some seal meat with me. So I did that, and I had that going on every Saturday for anybody to come in and learn my culture, learn who I am. And I also told them, I'm going to ask you to make a pair of mitts for yourself or your husband, but I don't want you to go out and buy new material. Go buy a jacket from leather jacket from Value Village, or dig into your closets. We have to get in Inuit. We always use material. I don't remember having any garbage when I was growing up. I just don't. There were cans and stuff that we would, my dad would let us dig the ground and have a landfill, only cans. And so I told the white people that came over, I don't want you to buy new material. I want you to skin the couch that somebody threw away. It's good leather. And I've been known to skin a couch downtown Ottawa. I don't have a care what anybody is thinking, because that is good leather. And so on APTN, they call me the roadkill lady, and I started getting introduced as the roadkill lady. Yeah, Gabby, I could just go on. I don't know. I think I lost you.
No, I love that. That's so awesome. I feel the same way. Like when I see, I've been known to like run in front of cars that are trying to hit gophers. Cause like I don't want to see that, and it's just a gopher, and I know it sounds silly to some people, but it's still like a living being, right? So yeah, and I wish I knew how to harvest.
There was a question, sorry to interrupt. How do I live down south or something like that? And this is a really, we've never lived, we don't have trees. It's very crowded. It's a claustrophobic. The tree was the first tree I saw was when I was 14 years old, to touch it. A lot of children in the north have never seen a tree. And we used to draw trees because our drawings when we were going to school, every tree had apple on them, because that's what we thought, they had apples on them. And everything was so perfect down south. One of the students used to draw the clouds to be complete circle, because everything's perfect down south. All the white people have perfect lives. That's how we were taught. And when I that's why I have my tent. It makes me forget the land of what it should look like, what I grew up. But I do love the trees now. I used to be scared to camp in the trees. I couldn't sleep. There's too much noise. When you're in the Arctic, there's no noise, period. Only the geese in the morning. Here down south, the noise is different. It's the crickets. There's so much noise in the woods. And I cannot just be being Inuit, being outside, doing something outside on the land is mental health. It's a mental health medicine to us. And I cannot, with isolation with COVID, I couldn't stand being in the house all the time. I cannot do it. I would go crazy. I'm an outside person as a Native person. And that's why I told my husband, my tent has to get up. I had it get up in Canmore. I had a wood stove because that's normal to us. And the neighbors called the fire marshals and they told me to take it out, and I got into trouble with that and stuff. But I have to be on the land. It's who I am. It's my blood. And this is my medicine.
Miigwech, Manitok. I really love listening to you. It's really deadly. I love listening to elders talk about like sustainability and reconnecting to the land. I found it really interesting how you talked about your relationship with trees. A7G this year, we went on maple tree tapping in an urban area, and that was really fun. I'm gonna pass it over to Fred. I have a question for you. Being in Algonquin territory where there's lots of trees, and reminder that this webinar will also be shown to people who haven't been to Algonquin territory or are calling in from Vancouver. So what really makes Algonquin territory unique from your perspective?
Oh, okay. Kind of tough question, but I think Manitok explained it. Just by the experiences that she remembers as a child growing up and being taught and experiencing that out there. That's basically it. It's the same feeling. And even for anybody, any Indigenous person or any Inuk or anybody else across Turtle Island, our teachings, all of our teachings are land-based, and there's an association relationship. So Algonquin territory is, it's just something that I'm familiar with, because in the stories and stuff, I have relations to all of the things in the forest. So I think what makes it unique is just that what's here, like there's the shingle bees, there's the pine trees, the spruce trees, balsam, and there's stories associated with them. But there's also uses and crafts and respect. So going out elsewhere, it'd be a little different. First time I remember going up north, and it was exactly what opposite to what Manitok. There was no trees. I only saw little trees at the tree line. It was only about that size, and he says, "Well, that you're at the tree line," and I was like, "Okay, my running joke was when you see black spruce in Cree territory, well, when you're getting in, the running joke was when you get into Inuk territory, if you try to hide between the black spruce, whatever, you could see you because you're taller than them and stuff like that. So it just depends on the neck of the woods, what you're familiar with. But when I went up north, Shefferville, and see the tree line and further, I think what I saw was the comparison and the beauty of where I'm from and where somebody else was living. And it was just that adaptability. And it's just like when you go to BC, I remember first time in BC, and I looked at one of those giant trees. Like I had to look up and I got a sore neck. I went on Vancouver Island and there was one of those forests there and one of those trees. And my son says, Dad, he says, you got to come over. He says, you got to see this. And he says, what's that? And I saw the biggest cone there was and the biggest slug. And he says, you got to see the size of this tree. And so he takes me over and we go up and I'm looking and I can't see the top. I had to back up pretty far. And even then I couldn't see. And I got a sore neck just looking up. And he went on the other side and the tree was so large. So I says, wow, you know, but it was just, I think it was that appreciation. And if you're brought up on the land or if you hear stories or if you're out there, I don't think there's no difference. And I think it's when they say as an Anishinaabe person and in some of my acknowledgements, it says that we love our lands and we take care of it. We take care of our lands that we're in and everything else that's in there. So that's why it's interesting to hear what Manitok is mentioning. And it brings back a story of mine when I went to school in London, Ontario. And in my second year, I was looking for a place. And there was an Inuk lady. And she was with her son. And she says, I'm renting a room. And we had a course together. Anyways, what happened was we had an economics course, and I happened to mention, because she's the only Inuk, and I was one of the few Indians there. It was only like in the class, we're the only two. So we started talking, and she says, yeah, I got a room. She says, if you're looking, she says, you could stay with us and keep us company. So I remember I moved into the room, and then so I asked her, what's the difference between here and, you know, like, I think it was up in a copper mine or one of, she goes, yeah, she goes, the mornings are noisy. She goes, there's all those birds and all those stuff. She goes, I don't get that up my neck of the woods. She says, it's peaceful, it's quiet. She goes, all these birds singing and everything. She says, it's a racket. She says, I can't even sleep and stuff like that. So we're just laughing. By the time we finished the course and we finished the year, I asked her again. She goes, yeah, she goes, I'm kind of, she said, I'm really getting used to it. And she says that I make the comparisons. And she says from hearing just the, like what Manitok said, just the geese, but she says hearing other ones, she says, it trained me to listen. And it also trained me to appreciate where I'm from and where I am. But knowing there's a lot of similarities in terms of, you know, stories and tales of the land and all the beings that are in there. So I think it's what's really special. I think it's being able to share with everybody their experience of where they're from in terms of the land experience and that interrelationship. And I think that's one of the things that is not shared very often, or people only come to understand now because of isolation. This gives us time to sit and reflect, but also to talk to each other and to see where we're from and to appreciate those land areas. I'm lucky. I'm here in the community and here in a forested area, and I hear the tree frogs singing and hear the geese landing and all the stuff. So I think I'd be worried if I was in the city, I wouldn't hear as much. So, and with this pandemic, I think I understand where the elders were coming from, and meaning that there's challenges, but if there's a challenge that comes up and if you're where you're at, then it's not as much stressful. But then I think with Manitok, when I see her tent, that brings back all that stuff, and you need that. You know, you need that, like you're in a camp or whatever. That's what we grew up with. I still remember my grandfather make sugar, and he'd do like what Manitok has. You can make that canvas tent and go make wood split wood, cut wood for him, and then he'd boil all night, sleep during the day, and we'd gather the sap. And I remember those times. So those are the things that Manitok reminds me of. And Donna, like the berries. This is the berry season, and one of the things that's very important for women too is the berries. Is that when the strawberry leaves help for women that are pregnant, helps with ease contractions and things like that. So this is the change in times as well. Frogs are coming, and some of them, like in the lodges, they say you don't tell stories at certain times, or the dragonflies come out, or when the bats come out. Like people complain right now, oh, the bugs are out. Well, yeah, wait till the dragonflies come out and wait till the bats come out. They're going to feast. So they're just bugging us, but they're going to be looking out for somebody else, the dragonflies. So there's always that interrelationship. And I think for me, I just happen to be familiar with territory, but I think everyone across Turtle Island, from Squamish or with Suiton or Inuk areas or wherever, I think it's, if you're brought up with that, then you appreciate it, and that makes it special because you have the stories and the relatives and the relations, and everybody's not too far, so that's the good part. Miigwech.
Thanks, Fred. That was really great. Me and Harmony were actually just talking about how much we hate mosquitoes, but then we were remembering all the fireflies that will come out soon. And so I'm gonna bring up Manitok and Donna, and I have a question for you all. So one sec, let me just bring Manitok up here. Okay, nice. I have us all up here. So yeah, we'll just do kind of like a Q&A kind of style. And I guess like one question, and I think you all kind of touched on it a little bit, but I was hoping you could talk about it a little bit more, is what does land-based learning and living mean to you? So maybe I'll pass it over to Donna first.
Okay. Land-based learning is a word that's being used now. And really what it points to is who we are, really. I appreciate Manitok remembering how it was to live off the land. My mother was like that. She lived off the land. My grandmother, my grandparents, they lived off the land. And I was very young, 2 years old, when my father passed away. And, residential school took hold of my families, and they had quite a bit of struggle with alcohol. And it's because, we're taken away from the land. We're taken away from that which we know. We're taken away and not given the opportunity to connect to who we are. And so, I remember a story. Now, my mom she went to residential school. I didn't, but she had a really bad infection in her leg. And she tried pain medication, didn't work. She tried anti-inflammatories from the doctor, didn't work. And she was always complaining of pain until the point that the doctors were naming her eccentric. In the hospital, they're saying eccentric old woman. Today, if they called her that, I think I would retaliate. But back then, I was so concerned for her pain. It was like you guys don't believe her, you know? You don't believe that she's in all that pain. So we went back home and she said, Dennis, I want you to go and get some cedar. And she didn't give me any teaching. She just told me, go get cedar. So I went and got cedar. She grew up like Manitok in a tent. She grew up that way. And she didn't want to tell that her grandmother was a healer. She didn't want to say anything. My grandmother knew how to work with the medicines. And so she said, go get cedar. So I went and got cedar, and she said, get a pot of water and put the cedar in there. And I did. And she said, okay. And she says, I want you to put that right on my leg. And I did. And I just did what she was told. I didn't realize what she was doing is she was starting to remember the old ways. You know, she was starting to remember the connection she had to the land, the medicines that are there to help us heal. And so we later found out that she had a condition called Phlebitis. And it's a bacteria that eats away the veins. And she ended up having a heart surgery, and they couldn't find enough vein to fix her. So she only had a little bit left. So she lived that way. And I remember that. So in essence, my mother knew. She knew about the land. She knew about medicines. She knew about preparing the dead. She knew about bringing babies into the world. She knew all of that, but she didn't say anything because her mom taught her to do that. And so when I think of where I come from, and by the time I was 20, I don't know, maybe 18 or 20, I was a pretty confused young person. And I always turned to things that would hurt me. And I never had or even thought of what the land could give me because I didn't know who I was. And over time, I'm not going to take too much time. I'm just going to try and go fast. But like over time, I was so sick, you know, that I used a lot of modalities to heal, you know. And I fell into our culture because I wasn't raised with it. I was raised in a way that was bush culture, okay, but I didn't like it. I didn't think it was purposeful. I didn't believe that it was worth value. It was valued, you know. I didn't believe any of that. I was ashamed. I would never even go back home. Like it was like, I don't know how many years before I went back home and connected to my community. And then when I started spending time on the land, there was great healings that happened. You know, I was able to reconnect by sitting under a tree, and it's raining outside, you know, and by fasting, you know, seeing eagles for the first time in a different way, knowing what they represent, you know. So land-based learning to me is not something that we learn, it's who we are. It's who we are. Because our identity, like Manitok said, is on the land. Her identity comes from her community, where she comes from. Fred, the same thing. And me, I come from Ojibwe territory in Northern Ontario. You know, that's my land. Anishinaabe, Bitagang Anishinaabe is my territory. And that speaks a lot to who we are, you know, is where we come from. So for me, land-based learning is on the other side, there's lots of us who have been affected that don't know that. They don't know that. It's just starting to come back in our communities. We have like moose camps now, and we have like camps of language camps in my community. We have that because nobody can speak the language. You know, it's dying. And that's all, to me, land-based, if you want to, definition. And they have elders gatherings and, powwows and sweat lodges and sun dances in my community, and all that stuff is all land-based, People working with medicines again, like before, So quite proud of that, to be honest. And it's being passed down to our children and our grandchildren. We had no ceremony in our family, nothing. We were born and raised Catholic. That's what we did. And that's the influence that I had from my mom. But you know what? That's a part of my life as well. And we are bringing back ceremony into our lives, into our grandchildren's lives, so that they can do, be proud of who they are. Land-based learning can be defined, I guess, but really, for me, it's a way of living. It's a way of believing. It's a way of seeing, a way of who we are, how we are. Miigwech.
Miigwech, Donna, you always just nurtured the inner child in me. Miigwech. I'm going to ask the same question over to Manitok. What does land-based learning mean to you?
I was going to try to share a photo, but I'm not sure how to put it down here. It was just the landscaping of, it's just a photo from back home, because I did not grow up in a tent. It's too cold in the Arctic. We just used the tent in the summertime. But my mom and other ladies, if they don't have a cabin outside their house to do their skins and other stuff and cooking wild meat or preparing skins and stuff like that. Most of the ladies up north have a cabin outside their homes to do those things, and a visiting gossiping place, I guess. But we do have this tent, not to live in, but to do your sewing and stuff like this. Otherwise, it's too cold to live in. I grew up in a house. My father worked for the dew line, which is the early warning system in case the Russians came over. There was all these dew line stations across the Arctic, and my father walked 11 miles to work, while us kids walked 4 miles to school. This was in the summertime. In the wintertime, my father took the dog team to his workplace while we walked to school. And that's not far at all. Like today, the kids, if you tell them to walk that, they think it's really far. But for us, it's just down the street, just to walk over. It's 3 miles, 4 miles. It was not a problem. Sometimes would be very cold, like minus 40, 50, I guess. Never bothered us, it's just normal. I was teaching, actually I was being contracted to teach in some of the schools down here to talk about my culture and stuff. And I tried to teach the high school kids, this is who we are. We still go hunting, we eat raw meat, we do these things so that they can get familiar with who we are. And when a lot of times you say native, and the first thing somebody might think, oh, they get pregnant at 13 and stuff like that. We have to orient the people that we are the same thing. And somebody came to my house, a couple, this was because I sell fur hats. The man came in to buy the hat, and the wife, very nice people, the wife asked me, so your people get pregnant when they're 15 or 14? And it's not being mean, it's just people are not educated. They're not knowledgeable. Their brains have not grown up. That's how I see it. All I said was, well, I saw on TV the series Teen Pregnancy, so maybe it's the same thing. Like, we're humans, we're the same thing. But I can tell you, Aboriginals are survivors. We're not only survivors, we live. We just have victory. That's what we try to do. And in my culture, every morning we had to go outside and greet the weather. It's called aniya. We greet the weather every single morning with frozen sealskin boots, sometimes put them on, and go outside every single day. My parents, my grandparents, my forefathers, everybody. That's how we grew up. We would go outside and greet the weather. It's not spiritual thing. It's you observe the weather and you go back in and you tell your parents what the weather is like outside. It's not a religious thing. It's a custom. It's like white people, they wash their face when they wake up. We would go outside every day. It's called aniya. It was a custom, very beautiful custom, and I still do it today. I go outside just for a few seconds, just to get the air, to be outside. And every lake, every hill, even rocks have names. They have names. And I remember my mother was saying, I know where you guys were again. You were at that little Tasigluk. I just know it. You've been at Tasigluk again. And Tasigluk was a little pond near our house. That was her name. It's nothing spiritual. It's just she had a name. It was a little muddy little pond. And so when I grew up some years later, I went back home. I went back to, it's abandoned now, it's a ghost town. Our old house is the only one standing there. And I went to see Tasigluk. I just didn't say anything. I just wanted to see her because she seemed to be so big when I was small. But now she's small and she got lots of weeds and stuff like that. But that still Tasigluk that got into trouble so many times, that little Tasigluk. And Uyagasujuk, big boulder rock, where all the kids in town would go on there and just try to climb and be the first one on top of that rock. It was our playground. It just, the big rock. And Tasialuk, the big lake. This is where our moms would go down to the edge and wash clothes while the kids just jump around in the water. We have names for rocks, for lakes, for the hills, for everything. And the Inuksuks that you see up north are not like human beings. That's wrong. That's a Tokyo version of what I think it's a touristy Tokyo or somebody Chinese came over, made in China type of a thing. If I see English is not my language, okay, Gabby. I speak it like that. And the Inuksuk's are pile of rock. There's a message. Is in some Inuksuk's have a little point pointing to the lake where you should be fishing. Not over there, not over here, but over here. Because under the lake, the fish have trails. You have to find that trail. You don't just drill anywhere all over the place. You have to try to drill. Well, my nephews do this now. They drill in a straight line right across the lake, trying to find the trail of the fish when they're ice fishing. But we had Inuksuks that said, there's the fish in this right here pointing. And then there's Inuksuks where the caribou would follow that way. These Inuksuks in line, the caribou would start to follow them to the lakes and then to the river. So the hunters would catch them at that particular trail. As I said, we cannot do with just staying inside all the time. If you want a person to heal mentally, you have to take them out on the land. The jails, it's not an Aboriginal way of thinking. It's not healing that person. It's making him more miserable and making him more murderous and hateful and stuff like that. Because that's just the way the system is and we are living with it. We don't want murderers out. But they need to have a place where they have connection to the land. When my husband was in charge of the jail system, because he was Assistant Deputy Minister for the Justice Department in Nunavut, he went to visit the Inuit in jail in Gravenhurst. He asked them, what do you guys want me to do? And they said, please buy us a tent. And he did. Our government bought them a tent. This is where they start to heal inside. It's we are outside people. We're not inside people. The young people, they have to go out on the land and learn how to cut a moose and to make dry meat, to skin it. They have to feel it. They have to get out of this gross. You know, it's gross. I don't want to say that's too fragile. We don't want them to be like that. We don't want our Native people to be like that anymore. That's not who we are. We want them to like who we were, because that's who we are. I'm talking too much, so I can take your time. So that's it.
Thanks, Manitok. That was awesome. I love to hear that. And it's like, it's really relatable, like being like a city native, there's so little access. But then, if you really try and get your hands dirty, there's so many opportunities. So that's like really what we've been doing with A7G, like trying to get folks out on the land again. And we're just learning. So, but it's a lot of fun. And you learn the hard way sometimes, but it's all good. But I'll pass it over to you, Fred. And so the same question, what does land-based living and learning mean to you?
Well, I think between Donna and Manitok, I think it's basically the same thing. And sometimes I'm asked to do a land acknowledgement. And one of the things is people, non-Indigenous people, they use the word as a prayer. There's a difference. I was always told there's a difference. There's the business of religion and there's religion. And never quite understood it until compared to the teachings. And it was one of the late elders, William Commanda, had mentioned that. And He had said, yeah, there's the business of religion, and then there is religion. And religion could be anything you want to believe in. You don't force anybody. But then there's a business of religion where you're collecting something and trying to force somebody, etc. And there's a reason. It's usually monetary. And when that happens, everything else is forgotten. When one hears a land acknowledgement or an acknowledgement, it's not a prayer, it's an acknowledgement. And the one I provide and the one I hear, when you hear a traditional acknowledgement, it's usually said in the original language. And sometimes it takes a while because there's a sequential order to it. And it's usually never translated word for word. It can be paraphrased by the one who is doing it, or it could be translated. But there's a reason for that. But in the general sphere or summary is that there's that sequential order, and one of them, it starts off out of nothingness. Things were created. Now, as human beings, we have difficulty of understanding nothingness. There is things there, it's just that we don't understand it. But out of that, things were created. The universe, the stars, and everything else in the planets and the one where we live on. And on this land, Aki, what was provided was all of this Madzuin, which is everything living. And before there was human beings, the sun, the moon, the earth, the land, and the two-legged, four-legged, and all of those were created, and they were all given instructions. And they were giving the seasons and things to follow. The last ones to be created was the human being, and the human beings are created in colors. And because we were dangerous, we were given a little bit more intelligence, and was one of those requests. We were given teachings. And the teachings and the ceremonies were to help us understand what was created before us, way before us. Because all of the things that were created before us are following all of those instructions. So as one of human beings created last, but because we were given intelligence, we are dangerous. And the Anishinaabe were given instructions to travel to the four directions to see, and then to be able to do all of that, but to see the wonderment and appreciate all of that. And this is what the acknowledgement is. In a non-indigenous world of there's a prayer, and usually the prayer is always asking for something. It never acknowledges you ask for this or you ask for whatever. When the Anishinaabe, it's a different understanding. It's what you have is provided, is appreciated, and acknowledge it because it's been provided. Everything is there, is provided. It's how you use it, but also in the levels that you use it. And this is what it means for me, is that it's land-based is something new that the non-Indigenous are just discovering when resources are depleted, and you have right now, like you have global pollution, you have space pollution. I mean, you just look on Google and you see all this space junk up there. You know, that's kind of really hard to comprehend. Why do you want to go to space and you go up there and you're polluting it? Somebody's going to go to Mars now, they're going to go and pollute it over there. You know, even though they said there's might be nothing on it, but there is something there, but we just don't know. But we're going to pollute it. And you know, and that's one of the things. There was a saying that when I used to work at the Assembly of First Nations, and I remember going to some of these meetings with all the leaders across the country, Turtle Island, east to west, north to south. And I remember the constitutional discussions, and one time there was an impasse in one of the meetings. And anyways, there was this Dene elder got up. And there was an issue about land and this so-called land-based teaching, but also the language issue. And one of the things is it's called Anishinaabe are speaking. And the person had said this, he says, I speak the language and the language speaks through me, through the land. I speak the language to the land and the land speaks through me, through the language. And it sort of like went like this to everybody. And myself too, but after that, the end of that meeting, I thought about it, and I thought about the grandparents. He always told me, one set of grandparents was liberal and the other was conservative. The other one that's conservative was always said that don't forget your language. And what they were saying is that because if you understand the language, you will understand where you're from and where you're from with the land. And on my mother's side, they were the conservative ones, and my grandfather was a consummate storyteller. And he would tell stories, and I remember before going to school, and he would talk about things. And one of them I remember was the Wabe Makwa. He says, that was like the white bear. And I used to say, a white bear? It was only until I went to school that I seen it was a polar bear. And I saw stuff on TV. And he said, Kiwe, Nongwa, sa Dinakiaya Wabe Makwa. And then there was a story that went with the how he knew of how the story of the polar bear. And so that kind of, I always remember that. And when I hear the story, I would always think of the far north, and I would think of such things like animals like that. And when one looks at a lot of, like when you hear lodge people, and they do them, and when one announces oneself, what that is acknowledging all those teachings and all that's there within the land. So all our names are taken from the flora and the fauna, or from where land meets sky and land meets water. We all have those. We all have names. For me, it's like Kabonisha on my dad's side, Wakshikwe, Fox on my mom's side. If you look at agreements, there's things, there's characters in some of the treaties. There's the crane, there's the heron, a jijok, and a shage, and there's other animals. If I was to line up, my Kabonishan is the one who lands, I would line up with the birds, and it would most likely be with the crane or with the heron by virtue. So there's that flora and fauna relationship. So it's like for those of you that are in the audience today and that are here on Zoom from BC to right across, for those of you that you have kids or if you have nephews and stuff, one of the things I remember is the Harry Potter stories. Harry Potter, if everybody remembers Harry Potter. One of the things I found with Harry Potter, I liked it, but it's a good video, but a series of them. But one of the things was very dark. And one of the things I remember is, you don't go into the forest. Don't you dare go into the forest, because that's a place, and this is European understanding or English understanding. Because there's things you don't know that are gonna get you or okay. For me as a Anishinaabe, it was totally different. It's like, yeah, that's where my relatives are, man. It's like, okay, I know stories of the bugs, I know stories of the fireflies, I know stories about the trees, I see the sky. There's the water beings. There's the water beings. And then there's the grandfathers, which is the rocks, and grandmother, and etc. There's all of those things. you were never alone. Because why? Because you had a relationship with either the flora or the fauna or both. So what it is, and I remember in going to several lodge, David lodge ceremonies, and one of them is that when I hear the acknowledgement, out of nothingness, and it's like this, out of nothing, things were grabbed out of nothingness when the creator created, and was given, the human form was given a spirit, was put in the form, and it was given life by being provided breath on it. Then it was given instructions, and it was created last, and it was given all of this and says, okay, we're now, remember, you're created last, you have spirit, and this is where you're at. Go out and check, because you're not alone, because this was all created before you. So remember that, because you also have teachings and ceremonies to limit, because as a human being, you're dangerous. And if you have language, you will understand even more, because this is only just one journey, and you're going to be doing other journeys. This right now, this is your just human form journey. There's going to be a coming spirit journey, and you're going to experience all of these things. And this journey is just very, very short. But where you're going to experience all of this is on the land, and all the land that's there, and everything that was created before you. It's all the life that was created before you, and everything else before you is following the instructions. So that's the most important thing. So for me, land base is, there's no such thing. It's just remembering those things. I think what happens is when you get in an urban setting, you're very devoid of that, and European history is devoid of that. So there's a really big contrast to the understanding, and we were told that, Nagaji Tonge Kaminagoyan, look after what was given to you. Zonk Tonga Kaminagoyan, love that what was provided. But especially Nagaji Tonga, and in the colors, the red color, this was the responsibility. And if you look at yourself today, and why are Anishinaabe so much in court? They're all legal cases in Canada, and they're all land-based related, hunting related, or etc. Well, it's because we're following the instructions. This is what we were told to look after. And I think one of the artists out there, he's since passed, is Norval Morrisseau. There's a good painting of construction workers, all look like oil workers, and then meeting the spirit being with a child, and the spirit being says, we speak for the animals. Against, it's a good little picture. Sometimes I use it in presentations and teachings, and I'm saying, for all that's there, and for those things that are being destroyed, well, there's somebody's going to speak for them. So it's going to be, a lot of times, it's going to be the Anishinaabe, because of the shared experience and the teachings, the things that we've experienced and the things that has been handed down. This just doesn't happen overnight. Today, we look around, we take water for granted. Non-Anishinaabe take water for granted. In North America, we look around. We look what happened in BC. There was a big rockfall, and it affected the salmon. But the nations out there, it's not just a salmon. There is stories of the salmon and all the beings with that. Those that fish, there's a relationship. Those that hunt, there's a relationship. There's a respect. There's a mutual respect. Like here we have a Mikoninook, we have the beaver people. Well, they had a relationship. They were beaver trappers, hunters, but they understood, because there was that relationship. You don't overfish, you don't overtrap, you don't overhunt, you don't overpick. So it's what you're in, and it's understanding that interrelationship. It's not an easy, but if you don't have that, then you make all these mistakes and we do all of this pollution. And I think there's a good one in Montreal that's coming up, and it's going to be in Ottawa. And it was in the news the other day. I think maybe Gabby or Harmony, check it out. I think you've seen it. You should hand it out to everybody. It's a tap, looks like with flowing water, but it's all the pollution in there. And the artist is making a physical creation of this stuff. And it's going to be like a giant tap, you know, the old taps there with the, okay, and things are going to flow out. There's everything plastic or all kinds. And it's saying that, yeah, this is what's happening with the water. But we put in what we, excuse the expression, what we throw as garbage or contaminate, we're drinking it. And it's coming now through the tap. Everything that we waste is coming through that. And as an Anishinaabe, we're pretty visual. And this one, I got a kick when I saw that. I says, yeah, this is just basically, and there was one last year before, it was when all that wastewater in Ottawa and Hull was dumped in the Ottawa River. There was a newspaper that had showed a guy, he took a toilet bowl and he put it on the river, and he was sitting there in the toilet bowl in the river. So it said a lot about what was understanding. But I think what land-based for all of us, and even for the non-Indigenous, for those that we are just coming to share, is that now that we have a shared experience, what that means. What is the Anishinaabe teaching? What is the understanding? And what non-Anishinaabe, for those that are willing to listen, come to see that we have to breathe the same air. We have to use the same land. We have to drink the same water. Biggest carbon, ones that use carbon the most are the biggest trees, yet they're cutting down trees, and most beautiful trees in British Columbia are everywhere. We take toilet paper for granted. How many balsams did we lose? How much toilet paper did we hoard? And people ask me, how come you got that behind over there? Oh, I says, I got how come you got that fancy blanket in the back? Oh, I says, that's my wall of toilet paper. I got carried away and I don't want to show what's left of the wall of toilet paper. I says, just kidding. But those are some of the things that, we're coming to, for those of us get the teachings, we come to understand. And I think it's sharing with non-Indigenous and that same understanding, and saying, yeah, there's things we need. If we don't have any air, we know what's happened. If we don't have any water, we just look what happened in Texas when they had the storms. They were shocked. They just didn't know what to do, and there's no power and contaminated water. Very most simple thing. We have water issues in communities, First Nation communities, but they live by lakes. Well, the government makes them, you still have to go, running water, like Manitok. I think one of the things is that expression, running water. I remember what running water was. I had to run to the well when I was small to go get the water. It wasn't running in the tap inside the house. 1970, I was about only 9 years old when we had running water in the house. Before that, I had to physically run and go get the water at a little well from the house. So those are some of the things that I think land-based teaches us, or the lack of a better word, but it teaches us what we should be appreciating and what we need, because we live on a very thin soil on this planet, and it's very fragile. But I think as Anishinaabe, Inuk, and Métis, and everybody else, those of us that have teachings, we understand that. And I think it's coming to share, and it's getting everybody else to do that, because then I think this is what we're looking at now. We stay home, but we're alive. We're okay. We just had to conserve or do certain change our habits and change our frame of mind. So for me, land-based is, this is what it means to me. It's just a non-Indigenous word that non-Indigenous people are just coming to understand, fully understand. And, you know, they're saying, well, we're doing electric cars. Yeah, well, you know, it still takes resources. Some are taking it quicker than others. Los Angeles, they have a smog problem. So they're understanding they're going to take electric cars. The rest of everywhere else, Texas ain't going to take it. Alberta may not take electric cars, but we'll take electric cars this way. So that's what it means for me. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Fran. Sorry, my computer started to die, so I just have to charge it. Okay. Thanks everyone for sharing. It was really great. I think we're just gonna